Right, hello and welcome guys, and in this quick demonstration video I would be showing you how to write a custom Suricata rule for one of the exploits that you'll be performing for the coursework. So this is to help you understand the concept, and then you can use this as a reference, as a guide to write the custom rules for the other vulnerabilities you'll be exploiting on the media server. Okay, so here I've got my Kali and my media server running, and I've got my access to the Kali machine. So the first thing I'm going to do is to SSH into the media server machine using the username student1, and this is the IP address of my media server. Password is student1, and I should be logged in. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to go into the Suricata directory, do a list, and then we go into the rules. So we need to write a custom rule. Okay, so we already have some rules already, but what I'm going to do here is create a custom rule. So I'm going to do sudo nano, and I'm going to call this metasploit rules. Okay, so if you've done the tutorial previously, which on the denial service, you should understand the concept, but I'm going to explain how this rule applies and how we can then include a signature within the rules in order to help Suricata make those sort of alerts. So we do alert the action and the protocol. So the protocol is HTTP, so we're saying from any IP address and any port that is directed at our home network. So home underscore network on port 80, because this attack we're going to be performing is against the Drupal remote code execution. Okay, so we know this is running on port 80, and that's why we specify port 80 on here. We open the bracket. What message do we want the alert to display? So we have message colon, and we could call this attempted Drupal exploit. Okay, colon, then we put a space. Alright, so you have to make sure that you write the signatures correctly. I'm going to put in some links to this video that will help you understand some of these rules. So the next thing we have to write is the flow. So flow established, comma, and then we specify to underscore server. Alright, so to our server, we're looking at any flow established to our server. That's what this statement is doing. Put a colon and a space. Then the signature, this is how we're going to define this. So at the moment we're looking for some sort of content that defines the signature, which we want Drupal or the IDS Suricata to be able to identify. Okay, so at this moment we don't know, so I'm just going to put content. I'm going to put in a post request, and I'm going to show you why this is a post request in a minute. I'll put another colon and HTTP method. Now the technique for this is that the tool server is for the flow, so established to server is the flow. The content which we want is an HTTP method, and we're looking for a post method. Okay, put a colon there, and then we define another content, and this time around we need to put in the signature, but we don't know what signature we're looking for, so we need to find our signature. Put a colon, HTTP URI. That's the next one. And the distance. We define the distance. So this is the number of steps that Suricata will have to check to match the signature. So we put a colon 0 on that one. And the next thing we'll then define is, I think, is the signature. So let me just check my notes here to make sure it's right. So once we define the distance, yeah, that looks good. And the SID, so the SID could be any number. So in this instance, I'm just going to give this 2044, and the version of my rule is version 1. Okay, so this is what your typical signature will look like for some of the attacks, and you have to modify this to fit into the signature. So now what we need to look for now is the content, the exact signature. Something needs to go into this content within the parentheses or the quotes within the content. So let's just save this rule for now. The next thing I'm going to then do is to let's close that, open another terminal and run Metasploit framework. msfdb run. And I'm going to look for the exploits that would work to exploit the remote code execution, and that's the one I want to perform. So I'm going to search for Drupal, and I've tested this before, and it appears to be the exploit number 4 that works. So use 4. Okay, options, and the only parameter we need to set here is the our host. So we set our hosts, which is the IP address of my vulnerable target, 116, I believe. Yeah, click on enter, and then before I run this exploit, I'm going to open another tab and run Wireshark. So Wireshark is a packet analysis tool and also data capture tool. So we're going to use this to monitor the traffic on the network and be able to see what exactly the exploit is doing on the network. So I'm going to start Wireshark, and Wireshark is listening on Ethernet 0. That's fine. We start Wireshark. Now there's no traffic, but now once we run this exploit, Wireshark should be able to pick up the network traffic, and you can see in the background we've got the network traffic flowing through, and we got a interpreter shell. Okay, so got interpreter shell, and I will then stop Wireshark. So the exploit succeeded. I'm just going to stop Wireshark at the moment. If we go back in here, we got a shell. Now we need to look for that signature. So if you can see, these are the network traffic that was captured by Wireshark when that exploit was happening. We can see my Kali Linux machine making TCP connection to port 80, a GET request. There's a response from the server, 116 sending a response, and then we can see some TCP packets. But as we begin to scroll down here, we'll probably see some data relating to the attack signature of the Metasploit exploit. So we can see some attack signature here. You can see it's performing the remote code execution. It posted some sort of username and password into the parameter, and at some point we get, this is where we get the shell. So you can see 4444. Our machine there is then sending a reverse shell on port 4444 to our Kali machine, and this is all that is happening here. So what I'm going to do here is filter out the HTTP requests. So HTTP requests, and then we click on this arrow button on the far right to look at the signatures. So we can see the signatures being sent by Metasploit. So let's right click and follow TCP stream so we can actually see the signature. And this is the post request that was made by the Metasploit framework exploit. So what happens is this is one of the signatures being used by Metasploit. So in order for us to detect this signature, we have to put this signature into the rules that we've created for Suricata. So I'm just going to copy the username, the /q user password and name. I'm just going to copy this little bit for that signature match. Then I'm going to go back into my rules and edit that point we did before. Where is it? So let's just type that again: sudo nano Metasploit the rules, and we're going to go into the content here and just paste this within the codes. So this is the signature Suricata would use to detect when we run that exploit the second time. So we can save this, and then we go into our Suricata YAML file. So we can do sudo nano Suricata YAML, and we do Ctrl W, look for rules, I believe files, says that cannot be found. Is it rule files? Okay, so we have to point the default rule file to our etc Suricata directory. So what we do now is to comment this out, I believe. Okay, so we comment these out, and the next line we put in the default path, and this would be etc /suricata rules. So that is where we have our rules, the Metasploit rule, and then we have to specify here that use this rule file that we just created. So Metasploit.rules. So that makes sense. So this is the configuration file, if you remember, for Suricata. We say in Suricata, go to this directory and use this Metasploit rule as one of the rules or signatures. So this is like a database rule that Suricata will check and find to see if there is any sort of signature matching to the exploit that we're going to run the second time. So this looks good. We save the file. Now we have to start Suricata. So I'm just going to pick up my notes, and you could also look this up in the tutorial notes. So the first thing we need to do is to sudo service Suricata stop. Okay, so we stop the Suricata service. That's done. The next thing we need to do now is to start Suricata to listen on our network interface. So sudo suricata-d-c. All of this is in the tutorial we did before on denial of service. Suricata, and then we have to specify the YAML file, -i, the interface, and the interface is ENS33. Now when we run this, we get an error saying there's a PID file that exists and we need to delete this file. So we need to do this first. So I'm just going to get the notes. So we need to remove that file, sudo remove var run, and then suricata.pid, I believe. Okay, so now if we run this again, we shouldn't get any errors. Good. So it says Suricata is running, and then we need to tail the logs so that we could see the logs or the alerts once. So I'm just going to clear screen so we can see the logs. So we do sudo, I believe, or we don't need sudo, we just do tail -f, and then we tail the logs. So var log suricata and fast log. Okay, so now we're tailing the logs, and once we run the exploit the second time, we should be able to then see the alerts. Right, so let's go on to Wireshark. I'm just going to close Wireshark because I don't need it anymore. We just use Wireshark to get the signature. So quit without saving. Go back to our exploits. I'm just going to exit this. And then we run this exploit the second time. Exploit. Now, if we go into here, we could see the alerts. So you can see attempted Drupal exploit. So now Suricata is using the rules file we created earlier on to actually detect the signature and then give us an alert. So in the coursework, you'll be expected to do this for every single attack that you successfully conduct. So for the Glassfish exploit, for SSH, for SQL injection, you have to write rules and take screenshots of this, document the process, and you also have to look for these logs or these alerts within Splunk. So these are the things you need to do for the coursework. You need to showcase all of this in screenshots and talk and write about it and document the process. So I hope this helps you to understand how to write a simple rule. The most important thing is the signature. You also have to look at the Wireshark network when you run the exploit to be sure to know exactly what that exploit is doing. Look for the matching pattern or signature that you can include in your rules. Like I mentioned, I'm going to put some additional reading on writing Suricata rules that you can read up, and hopefully that works out fine for you. So thanks for watching, and I should speak to you some other time. Take care.